Imagine for a moment that your entire existence, your people, and your future exist only by the grace of a single silent thread. You are living in a palace of gold and marble, yet you are a prisoner of your own anonymity. You are surrounded by servants, perfume, and silk. But outside the gates, a shadow is lengthening.
I
A decree
sense it
has been
now.
signed in blood and ink. A death warrant for everyone you have ever loved.
The path ahead is
You have no
fraught with
army,
danger.
no
I understand,
sword,
but we cannot
and
turn
no
back.
political
Then we
leverage.
proceed.
You have only your life, and the terrifying knowledge that to speak is to die. This is the reality of Esther, a young woman who found herself at the confluence of history and divine providence. Before we descend into the shadows of the Persian court and uncover the hidden strategy that dismantled an empire's hatred, I invite you to join our community of seekers by subscribing to this channel, where we unravel the mysteries of faith and find strength in the ancient stories. The air in the palace of Susa was thick with the scent of myrrh and burning lamps, but for Esther, it was suffocating. She was the queen, yet she was a stranger in a land of idols, a daughter of a displaced people hiding her true identity behind the veil of royal protocol. The threat was not a war of nations, but a war of pride. Haman, the king's right-hand man, a man whose heart had curdled with arrogance, demanded the one thing a servant of God could never give: total submission to a mortal. When Mordecai, Esther's cousin and guardian, refused to bow to Haman, the reaction was not merely anger. It was a cold, calculated desire for total annihilation. Haman did not want to punish one man. He wanted to erase an entire lineage from the map. He used his influence to manipulate King Ahasuerus, a ruler governed more by his appetites than by his justice, by crafting a narrative of threat and instability. He told the king that a certain people were scattered throughout his provinces, people whose laws were different and who did not obey the king's edicts. The king, distracted and disinterested, handed over his signet ring. With that ring, Haman sealed the fate of the Jewish people. Here lies the first mystery of this narrative. Why would a sovereign God allow such a terrifying decree to be signed? Why would the salvation of a people rest on the trembling shoulders of a woman who was technically forbidden from entering the king's inner court without an invitation? This is where the human perspective fails, and the divine strategy begins. Esther was not just a queen, she was a chess piece moved by the hand of the Almighty in a game no one else could see. She was placed in the palace years before the crisis, hidden in plain sight, prepared for a moment she did not yet understand. When Mordecai sent word of the impending slaughter, his message was not just a warning, it was a summons to destiny. He famously told her that if she remained silent at such a time, relief and deliverance would arise from another place, but she and her father's house would perish. He asked a question that echoes through every generation of the faithful. Who knows if you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther's response was not one of immediate action, but of deep, spiritual preparation. She understood that the battle she was facing was not won in the throne room of the king, but in the quiet, desolate space of fasting and prayer. For 3 days and 3 nights, she stripped away the royal finery and the luxuries of her position. She entered a space of absolute dependence on the Creator. This is the invisible strategy that the world overlooks. We build our plans on logistics, connections, and influence, but Esther built her counterattack on the foundation of a surrendered will. She knew that to conquer the hatred of Haman, she had to align herself with a power far greater than the king's decree. She was moving from a position of fear to a position of authority. When the 3rd day dawned, Esther did not march into the inner court with a demand for justice. She walked in with a grace that was not her own. Clothed in her royal robes, she stood in the inner court, facing the king, knowing that the law dictated death for her intrusion. But the king, seeing her, extended the golden scepter. Why? Was it mere chance? Or was it the result of a heart that had been softened by the prayers of a woman hidden away in the silence of the palace? Haman was still roaming the halls of power, confident in his malice, unaware that his downfall was already being orchestrated. He had constructed gallows 50 cubits high for Mordecai, convinced that his victory was absolute. He was a man who believed that power was equivalent to destruction. He did not understand that the true power resided in the one who had learned to sacrifice her own safety for the survival of her people. Esther did not strike at Haman in the open. She did not accuse him before the king, for she knew that a direct attack would only put the king on the defensive. Instead, she used the strategy of the banquet. She invited the king and Haman to a private dinner. She allowed Haman to bask in his own arrogance, inviting him back for a second meal. She let him believe he was the favorite, the man whom the king delighted to honor. She allowed his pride to balloon until it reached the point of bursting. This is the genius of her restraint. By waiting, by keeping her identity and her request hidden until the precise moment, she disarmed the enemy. Haman left the first banquet feeling invincible, bragging to his friends and family about the exclusive access he had to the queen. His fall was not caused by external interference, but by his own unchecked ego. At the second banquet, with the tension at its peak, the trap was sprung. The king asked again what her petition was, and this time, Esther spoke. She did not ask for a favor. She revealed the truth of the threat against her life and the lives of her people. She pointed to the adversary, the wicked Haman, who had dared to touch the queen of Persia. The king, realizing how he had been manipulated and seeing the danger brought to his own house, exploded in righteous fury. Haman's face turned pale. The man who had prepared the gallows for Mordecai found himself under the shadow of the same structure. The strategy of the silent, waiting queen had succeeded. Haman was removed, and the decree of death was countered by a new edict of defense. The people were saved, not by the sword of a warrior, but by the courage and the calculated patience of a woman who understood that her life was not her own. Consider the parallels we see in this story. Does it not remind us of another figure, one who also entered a domain of darkness, who also faced the prospect of death to save those he loved, and who also chose the path of humility over the path of force? Jesus, the King of Kings, walked into a world that had issued its own decree of death against humanity. He did not come with an army to dismantle the powers that be. He did not rely on the political structures of his time. Like Esther, he allowed himself to be placed in the center of the conflict, knowing that his sacrifice was the only way to reverse the sentence of sin. He was betrayed by those he trusted, mocked by those who held authority, and led to a place of execution which, like the gallows of Haman, was meant to be the end of his influence. Yet the cross was not his end. It was the place where the true strategy of God was revealed. By dying, he broke the power of the one who held the power of death. He reversed the decree of eternal separation, creating a path for all who believe to find life in the shadow of his grace. This story teaches us that what we perceive as a downfall or a moment of insurmountable suffering is often the very ground upon which victory is being prepared. We look at our struggles, our rejections, and our seasons of waiting, and we see only the absence of God's hand. We identify with the Jewish people, feeling the weight of the decree and the coldness of the gallows being built in our own lives. We ask, why must it be this way? Why must the innocent suffer while the proud flourish? But look at Esther. Her journey from exile to the palace, her time of hiddenness, and her moment of terrifying decision were all part of a larger architect's plan. She was being positioned. She was being tested. She was being refined. The same is true for every soul who walks the path of faith. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a participant in a divine narrative that is far larger than your current pain. The world encourages us to react, to fight, to make noise when we are challenged. If someone attacks, we strike back. If someone threatens our position, we fortify our walls. But the wisdom of the Bible, demonstrated through the life of Esther, suggests a different way. It suggests that there is a power in silence, in strategic waiting, and in total surrender to the timing of God. Sometimes the greatest strategy is not to move, but to pray. It is to hold your ground, to keep your identity secure in the one who knows your name, and to wait for the golden scepter to be extended. It is to recognize that the enemy is often defeated by his own hubris, while the faithful are elevated by their humility. When you feel the pressure of the world closing in, when the decrees against you seem final, remember the palace of Susa. Remember the 3 days of fasting. Remember the queen who risked everything because she knew that her existence had a purpose beyond her own comfort. We often wonder if we are enough. We look at our limitations, our fears, and our past, and we feel entirely inadequate for the crises we face. But God does not call the qualified. He qualifies those who are called. He chose an orphaned girl to save a nation. He chose a carpenter from Nazareth to save the world. He chooses you in your current situation to be a light in the dark places of your life. Do not fear the Haman in your story. Do not fear the accusations, the lies, or the obstacles that seem to be growing by the day. They have no authority that has not been permitted for a season, and they have no final say over your life. The one who placed you here, who knit you together in your mother's womb, has already provided the way for your deliverance. You need only to remain faithful to the truth and to trust in the sovereignty of the King. As we look back at the victory of Esther, we see that it was not an individual triumph, but a communal one. It was the result of a people crying out, of a guardian watching over his own, and of a queen who embraced her burden. You are not meant to face your trials alone. You are part of something much larger, a kingdom that spans eternity. Your suffering has a meaning that will one day be fully unveiled, just as the purpose of Esther's life was unveiled when the gallows were torn down. The mystery of the divine plan is that it often looks like defeat right up until the moment of victory. The cross looked like death, but it was the resurrection. The decree of death looked like the end of the Jewish people, but it was the beginning of their greatest deliverance. Your moment of trial is not the end of your story. It is the preface to the miracle. Many of you are waiting for a sign. You are waiting for the doors to open, for the king to look your way, or for the threat to be removed. You might feel as though you have been waiting for years, forgotten in the halls of a palace that is not your home. But let me tell you, you are exactly where you need to be. Every experience, every rejection, and every season of silence is molding you into the person you need to be for the moment you are about to face. There are battles that only you can fight, and there is a victory that is waiting for you to claim it through the power of silent, unwavering faith. Do not rush the process. Do not try to force the outcome through your own strength. Let the wisdom of the ancients guide you, and let the peace of the Almighty sustain you. There is a profound beauty in this story that speaks to the nature of God's hidden work. Even when He is not named, He is at work in every detail. Even when He seems silent, His voice is the foundation of all things. When you feel that God is far away, remember that He is the one arranging the circumstances of your life to bring about His perfect result. He is the author of your history. He is the one who holds the signet ring. He is the one who extends the scepter. You are His child, and you are destined for more than the threats of this world. There is a greater purpose for your life, a purpose that will outlive the obstacles you currently face. Hold on to the truth that you are not a pawn in a game of chance. You are a beloved creation of the Most High. The challenges you face are not evidence of His absence, but are the very tools He is using to prepare you for the destiny He has written for you. Embrace the silence. Embrace the preparation. And when the time comes to speak, do so with the confidence of one who knows that the outcome is already secured in heaven. The strategy of the kingdom is not built on the weapons of this world, but on the power of love, the strength of humility, and the unshakable truth of the promise. As we conclude this reflection on the legacy of Esther, consider where you stand in your own journey of faith. Are you still trying to fight your battles with human weapons, or are you ready to trust in the invisible, sovereign hand of God? If this message has stirred something within you, if you feel the weight of your own trials beginning to shift as you look toward the source of true strength, I encourage you to take a bold step today. Strengthen your commitment to this journey of faith by sharing this video with someone who needs to hear that their current suffering is not the end of their story. Let us build a community that stands together in truth, supporting one another through the seasons of waiting and celebrating the victories that come from relying on the wisdom of the Scriptures. Subscribe to this channel, leave a comment with your thoughts or your own story of deliverance, and let us continue to explore the depths of the divine strategy together. May you find the courage of Esther, the patience of Mordecai, and the grace of the King who reigns over all. Your story is still being written, and the best chapters are yet to come. Trust in the silent strategist, for he is with you in the palace of your life, working for your good and for the glory of his name. Stay faithful, stay expectant, and know that you are never walking through the shadows alone.